Welcome to a brief tutorial on how to set up multiple Sonos connects or ports to an Integra AVR. In this example, we'll be using a 9-channel, 3-zone capable DRX 5.3 receiver, and because they're still quite common, 3 connects. Before we get started going through the steps on how to assign connects or ports to inputs and zones, there's one thing we need to do first to avoid any confusion later on. Let's begin with going into the setup menu of the receiver. Here, choose speaker. Now, select configuration. Here we can see the default speaker configuration settings for this particular 9-channel model AVR. This is what we'd see when going into this part of the setup menu for the very first time. Of course, there are many different configuration options when using connects or ports, but for now, to keep things simple, we're going to be using one connect each for the main zone, and zone 2, and zone 3, using the AVR's internal amplifiers. Because for this example, we want to use the AVR's internal amplifiers for a total of 3 Sonos connects or ports, we'll need to change the default speakers channel setting from 7.1.2 to 5.1. That will free up the extra channels we'll need to stream music from the Sonos ecosystem through the connects and to speakers in different zones. Next, we'll change the default setting for zone speakers from No to Zone 2 and Zone 3. After we've performed the setup and registration of our connects or ports on the network, we need to get them communicating with the AVR. To do that, we need to go back to the setup menu and select Hardware. Choose Works with Sonos. Let's now determine which unused input on the back of the AVR we want to use for our first Sonos Connect. We can scroll through the input selector and choose any input on the back of the AVR that is not being used. For this example, we'll use the Toslink input labeled on the AVR as TV. Next, scroll down to Connected Device. Press Enter on the remote control or on the face of the AVR to begin the process of the AVR searching the network for Sonos devices. These are the Sonos connects the AVR has found on the network. To make it easy, I named each connect Main, Zone 2, and Zone 3 when I first set up and registered those connects. For our first connected device, we'll choose Main for the main zone. Pressing Enter on the remote or on the face of the AVR will automatically return us to the previous menu. Now that the connected device for the first Sonos Connect has been selected, it will display the name and IP address I assigned it when I first set it up. If you're using only one Sonos Connect or port, you can output that device to multiple zones. But for now, we'll keep the first connect assigned to the main zone. Now let's get the second connect assigned. Scrolling down from the Sonos 1 setup screen will take us to Sonos 2. Scroll right to choose which unused input on the back of the AVR we will hook up our second connect or port to. Let's choose BD-DVD, which defaults to the coax input. Now, just as we did with Sonos 1, we need to find the second connect or port on the network. There it is. Notice that the connect in the list labeled Main Zone is grayed out. It's hardly visible. That's because it's already been assigned to Sonos 1 and the main zone. We'll hit Enter for the connect labeled Zone 2, and that will take us back to the Works with Sonos setup screen for Sonos 2. Now let's tell the AVR which zone we want music streaming from the connect to play to. Scroll through the output zones and select Zone 2. Then scroll down the screen until Sonos 3 appears. For Sonos 3, we'll repeat the steps we performed for Sonos 1 and Sonos 2. Because Zone 3 will only play back analog audio sources, we need to select one of the unused analog inputs on the AVR. Streambox has an analog input, so we'll use that one. As before, we'll look for another Sonos device to add to the system. Select the connect labeled Zone 3. If we make a mistake in assigning specific connects or ports to different zones and we want to start over, the clear option will delete all Sonos devices from the list for all the zones. Now the connect labeled Zone 3 has been successfully added to the Works with Sonos ecosystem for our Integra AVR. Finally, we'll want to make sure we send the streaming music to Zone 3. That's it, we're done.